City Barthai. Midday, just before the sun crests up over the top of it. It's blotted out occasionally by the floating spires and islands of the arcade. Wizards flitting by on broomsticks, and every once in a while, the massive shadows of these monolithic schools and libraries will blot out the streets and blocks as you drive by in the sleek, white, chrome-laden automobile of Eliza's family. It winds its way away from the Garden District, with its spire and monolithic alabaster halls, its courtrooms, and its palaces, through the entertainment districts with its canals and its bridges that can peer down over into the canal district below. As you weave your way through ivy and spires, further down to the quaint riverside district with its small cafes and little retirement homes. Finally, before the teetering building that is Rosemary's, once an orphanage, and now your place of respite in this strange and massive city. Carry with you a leather folder describing all of the earnings you've just gained from your harrowing adventures off the Audalian Lakes coast after you saved over 1,000 people from what would have been their most certain death at the hand of a nefarious plot from an organization known as Vox. With new enemies and new questions, but as well new rewards, most of you pile out from the Straussmobile and go into Rosemary's home with a bit of mixed feelings and the certainty that you have a lot to plan for in the days ahead. But some of you don't have time to rest on that. Prior dates await, many of them important. And first of them, here, coming up at noon, is a lunch with Frederick Virokshon, a neurotic and strange wizard, reclusive, who is a student here in the Arcanum, but originally a citizen and a soldier of the nation of Young, which most recently has declared itself as an ally of the nefarious Omidori Empire, turning what had been at first a war off the Coterie coast, now into a truly world war. Nevertheless, he has been here for some time, studying his own theories and conspiracies, things that he says spans between nations. Believing that you might have clues to this, you agreed to meet him for this lunch. And as Eliza pulls up in her sleek Straussmobile in front of his manor, and you pop out, closing the door, you're left wondering what answers you're going to find within. Eliza pulls off down the street. You watch as she leaves, the door opens, creaking at the gate, to Willow's Dirge, the narrow, several-story high Gothic structure amidst the beautiful Audalian estates around it. You walk through the gate, and as you approach, the door opens, and you see, as immediately you are greeted by Frederick, dressed in austere attire, suit and coat, vest buttoned up. He looks a little lack for rest, but it's hard to tell if maybe that's just his general demeanor. Since the last time you had seen him, he still had the same bags underneath his eyes, the same pale visage that made it quite easy for you to see why Arthur might have called him a vampire. But knowing better now, he steps out, you watch as he steps out into the sunlight, and then he does not get burnt up. And in fact, turns to invite you inside with a, um, um, please, thank you. I'm glad you came.
Well, um, happy to be here. Right, isn't it right, son?
Thorman does a light bow.
Nods. As you head inside, he comes in behind you and he closes the door, and it immediately gets much darker and quiet, but for the sound of the wind going against the windows. The dining room door that had been opened before, partially ajar, closed now, and you can fully see the depiction that is like winged creatures from above in the clouds, fighting some horned beast down from below. And in the stark kind of light that comes from the gaslit lanterns on the walls, you can see every inch of this hallway that you've walked into is covered in portraits of various size. None of them are the same size. You get large ones and little small ones. Somehow they've been managed to be put together to fill every nook and cranny of this hallway. And in them are various photographs and sometimes oil paintings of people that share, very similar features to the man that you see before you. Pale, dark-haired, uh, sharp jaw, and somewhat crooked-looking nose, and sort of gaunt handsomeness to each and every one of them. And at the end, there's a window, two thin gossamer curtains on it. It's opened, and a breeze is coming through it, and it's filtered in a little bit of light to kind of take away from what the last time you had gone in here had been a very dour atmosphere. You can now see that every bit of this is clean. The floors are waxed really well. There isn't a spot of dust in this man's home. And he leads you past uh, the closed doorway that had led into his dining room, where you had uh, conversed with him before, and he says, "These are my family. Not mind their eyes. They are judgmental, but all dead. So their judgment leads you past to the end."
Laugh. So kind of up with his as he's walking. So that's why Arthur likes him.
You see that there's a stairwell at the end. When you reach that window, the hallway kind of eaves. And to the left, there's a stairwell, and to the right, there's a supposed lead up. But he takes you through the one to the right. It's very narrow. Like, you, Zarman, especially find yourself actually having difficulty moving up this hallway. The idea of you would not be able to fight in a stairwell like this, and it goes up for some time like that as it kind of spirals up this very thin, narrow spire all the way up. There are these little bits that kind of peek out, little slits, and the whole atmosphere of it. This thing feels like you're going through an old castle, not through somebody's home. It doesn't feel comfortable. especially at this particular portion. And you go up about 3 floors until you get to this. There's a few like landings that branch out every once in a while. You pass by 3 of them, and they all reach like a double set of doors, like one that goes to the left and one that goes to the right. But he leads you past these landings up to a wooden door, and as he approaches, the door opens of its own accord, and you step out into a spire library. You can tell that it must be the top of the back part tower of his home, and the towers on this building have that very conical shingled shape that make them almost have the appearance of teetering like crumpled wizard hats. And you can see one of these such shingled points kind of dipping past one of the windows, which are all these small circular shapes with cross hatches in the middle, and inlaid into each quadrant of these circular windows is a stained glass depiction. They're all at this point not actually showing any light, and it's rather dark in here. The sun is probably directly above this tower at the moment, and so no light is actually casting into any of these windows, and it's rather dark all of a sudden. But there's a bit of like ambient gray light that spills in through the windows nonetheless, and it gives this sort of soft attic feel to this space. And the bookshelves around, covering each of the walls, it goes into like staircases and cascading levels of it, to where there's actually 3 different levels of a library here, each of them with an abundance of chairs and couches that don't actually seem to be arranged in any particular like logical center, right? There are books that have formed the amount of books that you see in here is more than you had in the library back at Koiko, which was a lot. The Sage had a lot of books, and this, you could have fit the Sage's hut inside of this guy's power room here, and the books in here are expansive. As you walk past, most of them seem to be of an educational variety. Your eyes, especially, they'll catch a few. If you give me a Arcana check.
4.
24. You cut off, right?
Okay, 24.
But
Yeah,
Okay,
because
yeah.
we kind of like
4.
voted 4. I don't think it's possible for Zelda to roll a 4.
No.
I was like, man, what? 24.
24.
Looking across all of these, you can tell that most of them seem to be steeped in a lot of transmutation, but there's also a lot of like weird things mixed in. Like at first, it seems like traditional like transmutation weird stuff, but you start to catch that there's some in here that are of an extremely esoteric kind of variety. You get a couple of books that reference cults. You notice one that's actually was written by Dirk Winthrop. His book on apocalypse prophecies, post bereavement, and it you realize that this guy knows a lot about magic. If he's read even like a portion of the books in here, he knows a lot about magic. Now, the section that he leads you to is on the second landing of these 3. And the first landing that you walked past again was mostly a bunch of transmutation books and a big long table, like one that you would see in a grand dining hall. It's twice the length of the table he had in his dining room, actually. And it's just scattered along it with a really big map and a lot of books that you again noticed were mostly doomsday related. Now, on the next one, you realize that this next one is nothing but books about mathematics. On this landing, on the second landing, it's nothing but mathematics books, and there are a couple of what's the term? They're on wheels, but they're chalkboards, right? You can see a couple of chalkboards that are on wheels that have been spaced around this area. And they have various like arcane formulae written across. Some of them, you notice, aren't arcane at all. It seems to be just logical arguments of some kind. They're not certain at first. Looking at it, there seems to be a lot. With that Arcana check, you can tell that a lot of the stuff that he's got on these chalkboards seem to have something to do with the nature of infinity. There are a lot of arguments concerning infinity. Some of it's things you haven't seen before, but it's pretty heady stuff. And gestures to couch that in the middle of like this area of chalkboards. And he moves off of one of the couches a pillow and like blanket that he like quickly like balls up and puts on top of the pillow and put on like an armchair to the side, and he gestures to the couch, and there's a little trolley next to it. Got what appears to be a couple of different like snack cakes and crackers and a tea kettle, and he starts to brew what you assume must be tea. Please take a seat.
Summer will take a seat.
It was not any available for the time. Past week, I wanted to confirm on other theories. Give me a perception check. You.
Okay.
What is that? Perception?
Perception, yeah.
Yes.
24 kid. Same roll. 24-18, 24-18. Damn.
A lot of the stuff in here stands out as pretty obscure. You can see that there's a globe, Zarman. You notice that there is a map actually on one of the billboards, like one of the chalk ones. It's been like it's lived up to it, taped up onto it, and you can see that it's notated Durakyasna, as well as Lafloria, as well as Maiko's Wrath. And you, Zale, notice something weird that stands out to you because it's something you've been thinking about actually recently. You're fairly certain you know what the hell you're looking at. It looks like a projector of some sort for what you can see, like a reel of like tape that's wound within it. Like it's open on its side, and you can see a reel of tape like in a cassette tape, right? But giant for a projector. And like
Oh,
just perspective as a player, what you're looking at is an old school movie projector.
huh.
But you've never actually seen something like this before.
So it kind of like looks at it, kind of keen-eyed, just like, huh. Hey, Frederick, what is that? And so it kind of point.
Uh, Good eye. I bought this for a particular purpose, to illustrate today. I think that my theory, think it'll prove a valuable aid. It is a projector. You've seen photographs, yes?
Yeah.
This creates moving images of photographs, using mini photographs, a successive speed. Uh, the thing that you mentioned, uh, cream, sugar, and he looks at you and turns to you, and you can see that he's got like a metal kind of flask with a little bit of a nozzle on the top of it. You can't see what's inside of it. It's steaming off the top of it. It's got a little like porcelain cup behind him. Like there's an assortment of like jugs and things.
Something.
Sugar, do you get?
Um, two, two spoons.
And you, Zimanov.
One cube.
It works by making several still moments when played in a rapid progression appear to have the appearance of movement. It's very useful to illustrate a current conundrum.
Oh,
I hope you not mind if I. He hands you out both cups and then gestures to the projector. And
no.
straight.
I do that myself. I'm actually quite interested in it with it, so I actually see how it works.
Walks over to the wall and or to one of the little chalkboard things, and he wheels it around and on the opposite side of the projector. Then he flips it to the other side, and it's like blank on that end. And uh, he goes, all the curtains close over the windows, and the lights and the things all suddenly dim down very low in some of the areas and go completely out in some of the other ones as he flips on this projector, and it makes this sound, and you can see a single image projected on this chalkboard. It is of a person flying a kite, and it's just in still frame. It's black and white. You can see the clouds and a little person, a little triangle kite in between it, and names are paradoxes. That is what they owe you in the papers.
That's a group thing.
Sort of nods.
Kind of grown attached to that name.
Time traveler. No doubt I introduced idea is a paradox. presents many concepts that by conventional explanation. Sometimes there are conventional answers to issues. Say paradox, unconventional answer. I am a fan of paradoxes, you could say.
Sermon sips his tea.
Very much like that, God smile.
Yeah. Are you familiar with, as an academic, Fredwin Coe? Read much of his work.
I was actually gonna ask you eventually about a spell he actually cast on me about a week ago. But that'll wait until you're done first.
From what I've
Fredwin Coe. Same.
yes,
Perhaps announced.
we've actually met him in person twice now. I haven't read all his. I haven't read. I probably had a cursory glance of his book, but not in depth yet.
Had a called Dialogue of the Elements and introduced an idea that many consider paradoxical. Perhaps there was more implied. It is referred to as the paradox, or rather, Edwin's paradox of the infinite.
Huh.
The camera can help demonstrate. This is a short 6-minute projection. 6-second projection. It is made of 360 frames. Can control the speed. See as he slowly moves his hand crank on the projector and watch as you watch the frames move between each one. You can even see the spaces in between the frames actually. And they bring it its proper speed. In 6 seconds it should give the illusion movement. All 360 frames have passed by. You watch as he clicks it back to the beginning, and then he sets the speed on it, and 60 frames per second. And as it flips through the whole 6-second film, all 360 frames of it go by. You get this quick 6-second little thing of like a GIF, pretty much, of a kite flying, somebody just holding on to a small little kite, black and white.
Ah, fascinating.
It is suddenly motion, life. But if I most you can see as if time is passing. Which way is it going? Forward. And I change the film in the other direction. Watch as he flips, keeping the speed the same. He flips the reel, and you watch as the tape in it goes in the other direction, and it's forming this perfect little circle. The tape doesn't end, right? It goes right back around again inside of this machine. And as it kind of just flips through it, and it could continue on. It could continue the 6-second film forever if you kept it running, right? And it would just look like this odd little GIF of a person flying a kite as it circles back in on itself.
Huh.
And if I change the film in the other direction, which way is time passing? Looks at you, Zale.
Backwards. Interesting.
Time. Perhaps. To us, the observer, time is always moving forward. This is important. Before we reached the end of this 6-second film, he flips it back forward again into the other direction, stops it halfway through. First had to reach 180 frames. Before we reach 360, we must reach 180. If it took us 6 seconds to reach 360 frames, assuming we play it at the same speed, how long would it have been to reach 180 frames? Looks at the both of you.
Takes 6 seconds to do 360 and take 3 seconds to do 180.
Hey,
Just back 3.
ah, you are correct. 5 seconds. Before 180, would need to reach 90 frames. And that would take how long?
Second and a half.
A second and a half.
Ah, 1500 milliseconds. Before that, 45 frames, 750 milliseconds, 22 and a half frames, and so on, until the very first frame. He stops right at the first frame. He's now hand cranking it at that. Before that frame, all of time, all of math is infinite. All numbers can be halved to a greater degree. For milliseconds, there is a greater division. And if all actions take time, the only way this film can play is if it never plays. Because the only way an infinite number of tasks can be completed is by not having done them. In order for a task to finish beginning, it must stop being halved into infinity. For a sect to end, its integers must conclude. The only way to not have the distance halved to another infinite instance of time is for the object to not move at all, to remain at 0. And yet, the film plays. This is the paradox of infiniteness. Many people have had, there are many ideas on how to handle it. Some people refer to these as different kinds of infinity. They say that there is a potential infinite and an actual infinite. My theory is that the dream cycle is the potential infinite, not the actual infinite. My reason for this, I present another paradox. And he goes and pulls over and shuts off the frames, and the lights come back on and the curtains back. And you see as he flips that board back over, you can see on the other side is a picture of what looks to be the Grim Reaper, like a little cartoon Grim Reaper. And there's actually several cartoon Grim Reapers all lined up along this like racing track, right? And underneath it, you can see that it says 1 p.m. on one end, and then it says, 12:45, 12:30, 12:15, 12 o'clock, right? And there's just a Grim Reaper like at each of these little positive integers along it, right? And it's really oddly cute for having just like suddenly he flips this board over and there's these little cartoon Grim Reapers on this board. Grim Reaper paradox. Let us suppose, as we know, death, a true entity, a force that takes our life, the moment of our transfers our souls, dream after, some other place. Grim Reapers runs like his finger across each of them. Oh, there are many Grim Reapers. Perhaps one for at least every positive integer. Let us suppose that Grim Reaper 1 is disposed to kill you with their scythe at 1 p.m. If and only if you are still alive then. Otherwise his scythe does not strike you, taking 30 minutes to go about it. Grim Reaper 2, he points at another one, is disposed to kill you at 12:30, if and only if you are still alive then, taking 15 minutes to go about it. Grim Reaper 3 is disposed to kill you at 12:15, and so on, etc. You are still alive just before 12 p.m. You can only die through the motion of a Grim Reaper's scythe. And once dead, you stay dead. Now, on the face, this seems easily logical, conceivable. Each Reaper can be individually true and intrinsically makes sense, and it seems reasonable to combine distinct individuals with their own distinct properties into a single situation. But if we were to think for too long, it would reveal that this situation is a contradiction. I cannot survive to any moment past 12. A Grim Reaper would get me first, but I cannot be killed. A Grim Reaper in to kill me, I must first survive. Grim Reaper in +1. But this is impossible. This is, of course, because all tasks that take time must happen in the time that they take. Of course, I have rattled on this for some time, and many would call me mad about it. But I say that all of time exists within the dream cycle. You were to go to the dream before, dream after. Yeah, elemental planes. None of these exist with the constraints of time. So, the film plays. It's at the projector. Grim Reaper is at the board. Still one day strike me down. Of the dream cycle, a potential infinite. There's an infinite somewhere. You must conclude one of two things. Either A, fates are completely predetermined, odds included, or B, there is a multiverse, infinite magnitude. contained within a super task, within a finite end that we call the dream cycle. I prefer to believe in the latter. And he stops pacing in front of you. And he picks up his coffee mug that he's had in his hand this whole time but hasn't sipped, and then goes,
There's a moment where Zell that entire time was leaned forward and so fucking invested in what he was talking about. They didn't drink his tea at all. And he reminded, oh, I have tea. And like slowly kind of gets back to himself and looks at him kind of wide eyed, like, that's. Huh. I mean, I wouldn't consider you mad. I would just consider you. Highly. Wow. It's highly intelligent. Interesting way of looking at it. I mean, I have my theories as well, but. Huh.
of course, they were just theories, thought experiments. I have spoken of this many times with my doctor, as well as often met a line between some call madness and others perceive as genius. I recognize that theory is theory until it is proven. Um, they, there is, of course, value in both deductive and inductive reasoning, but sometimes it must be guided by abstractive reasoning, experience. At the edge of an event horizon, looking back at somebody counting a number, 1 second, one interval, every second into an infinity, they could see an infinite number of integers happen in a finite number of time. That is possible at the event horizon. And if that is theoretically possible, then I must believe that the impossible can be possible. There is a whole universe out there for every impossibility that has not been and that ever will. Infinity. And that, he points at your hand, that is the first step in proving this. But all of this, I do not expect to make much sense, but to prove a simple moral. You cannot go forward without moving. It is a paradox. It is unreasonable. If it takes an infinite number of possibilities, of integers, of time, to do the first step, and it is impossible to achieve infinity, then we watch the impossible happen. And it is time that I stop abstracting and I start inductively experimenting. And so I am, well, I thought I might ask if I might join the Stars and Seas Society as a researcher.
I kind of looked at Zarvin.
He sits down suddenly.
I kind of looked at Zarvin. Zell, you see this grid before. Zell gives you the grid.
We have more reasons to say yes, so don't see why not.
I would be more than happy for you to join.
Good. This stands up and walks around and extends a hand to like each of you and shakes your hands. That's good. It's time to make applicable experiments. Field such is most critical. Miss, I will put myself to use. However you did. There are many applications, not just theoretical, of my ideas.
Honestly, I have so many questions. If it's okay with you, this is not just as a employer to employee, but maybe as a potential friend. Might we study more? Might I study more in your library? These theoretical theories and everything like that. I, to be fair, I didn't
I
have really honest.
as hoping to have access to your greater resources than my own. You, of course, can have access to my humble resources as well. Whatever I can offer.
Still smiles at this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think you're a great addition. So, looking for. Do you want to meet the others later today, or not
Um,
quite yet?
no, at s- s- uh, at your quarters in uh, Sante Guild.
Mm,
Or you do you have other accommodations in this city?
Not yeah, they come like the garment. Not yet. We are now in the process of kind of rebuilding the Star City society at the moment. We should, and I think we're planning this in due time, have our atrium reconstructed and built. That would be definitely our headquarters. We have now making their plans. So, until things are finalized and stuff, still the facilities are built and reconstructed, you inform me where to go. Hopefully
Of
soon.
course. I do understand that you are as well not a scientific uh, um, organization in nature. Uh,
Mm.
so I do not imagine that you and my research fully. I am well accomplished, turned observed, experienced in combat, and a studies into the nature of infinity have given me unique understandings about space and time. As and you see suddenly the teacup in your hand gets much heavier, and where you like it like clunks down onto like the little platter it was on, and you're like surprised by the weight of it. It's not too heavy that you drop it, but it surprises you all of a sudden, and you look at it like what? Yeah, it's an parlor trick, but it can be applied to people as well.
Sounds like super interesting. It's like
And suddenly it becomes much lighter in your hand.
Did someone make an arcane check of what he just did? So this is my field.
Give me an Arcana check.
Oh, 27. Almost actual 30. Almost
You
actual.
know that he must be somehow like increasing mass of whatever it is that you've got. You have no idea how he's doing it. You really aren't understanding. You putting it together the fact that it has to do with infinity. You're realizing that his concept that there's an infinite multiverse is implied into like further subdivisions. All right, and that you could theoretically have a subdivision of something that's greater than the collective unit of divisions. That's one thing you noticed on one of the boards, the possible theory you had noticed when passing by. And when you noticed it, it didn't really make sense. It sounds illogical, actually, when you looked at it. So you thought maybe it was like a bad theory. But looking at this, you realize that he's placed a paradoxical idea into application. You don't see him casting magic, though. You see nothing. Like, it just gets heavier and then it got lighter. And then all of a sudden you feel yourself get lighter. Like you feel like all the weight in your body suddenly disappears. You go back to feeling normal for a moment, and
Interesting. I have to figure out.
But like, I don't bubbles for a second.
Interesting. Huh.
and
Like,
one is at infinity when it comes to many paradoxical conclusions that oftentimes the right conclusion, the one that is both the most simple and the most outlandish. Something sounds simple and yet absurd. Chances of it being right, I find to be much higher than most assume. Nature is intrinsically paradoxical. I much an issue wrapping my head around this, so I understand if this is hard to put to terms or understand. When I was faced with these things, it was not in theory, but because I saw a certain impossible reality, which, with you having traveled through time, I think you might understand.
yeah, I think I know where you're getting at. Huh.
What was it like? Oh, a time loop.
Interesting, to say the least. Funny things you don't take away from what we were told. We were in there 563 times. So technically, we died 562 times. Most of us were.
Were knew how many times it happened. You were
Yes.
aware the
Uh,
passing of these.
we had somebody tell us because there was a construct in there who was keeping track.
It's the contract.
Observer.
Mm-hmm.
So the construct, they observed time linearly, even though you were integerally experiencing your own loops.
Correct.
Right.
An outside observer observing an infinite number of integers. I knew it. Ah,
That's why I said your theory is not so abstract as you think.
And I believe a word with CAC may actually do some well.
Yeah.
Because
Matar.
he seems to be a CAC from that isn't necessarily our CAC.
Somehow an increment of another CAC was able to come here or combined. We don't know exactly what happened. They said really much. But another increment from another increment were able to combine to one.
So some events are slightly different from what he understands because he may have come from a different place.
Alternative.
Two integers. A whole of one person. Two different timelines. It is interesting.
Yes, very.
Heard of the heap of rice paradox. Goes as have a heap of rice. Take one piece of rice. That is still a heap before you, not moving one kind of rice does not make that no longer a heap. If you take a second, it is still a heap, and a third, still a heap. But at some point, that is no longer a heap of rice. At what point does a heap of rice no longer become a heap? And can one piece of rice make the difference? And at what point is that difference made? I could rattle on these. However, do not mind me. Most of these have no answer. That's why I endlessly about them.
I just figured, even though he was slightly rude to you that last time, he may actually have information you'd find interesting.
People are allowed there in the privacy. I not ask somebody to betray theirs. At the same time, I must guard my own. Respect to no respect was lost. Disgust and pain. That is.
Good on then. But
I must say that I myself sorry that I not able to respond at a haste to your letters. But you did mention that Quidwin. I still find yes, you placed a spell on you. Very much like to see this.
I'm not sure how you would go about observing it, but
well, it's kind of effects like that. It kind of, if you take a closer look from right kind of magic, you can see it, observe it. All right.
It's the nature of this, so that I know what I'm looking at.
Zell, would you be able to help communicate this better? Because I'm still not quite sure.
Through magical means, he can figure out what's going on with you.
Because that most he mentioned is as the spell was being inlaid, that defying the order he set would cause my death.
Oh, that is powerful magic. I'm certain. It is and for purpose would such drastic measures be taken.
Well,
Yeah, well, I ended up asking for a thing in his possession and for him to have security put the spell on me.
Um, Jones, that is however, if this is the type of magic you are describing, that's something that I can help with. One best in versus.
yeah, I don't know exactly what he put on you, that's the problem.
Perhaps a priest might have better aid. A witch, even.
Yes, even in case it was a bonding kind of spell. Which would, as I agree, which would be better in this situation.
I
You
just
wish
figured I
to
would ask a
remove
trusted
it.
source first. I'm not sure if removing it would alert Bridwin or not. Not sure how these
Then
things work.
shouldn't. That is would have to be maintaining constant concentration. I doubt that such a taxing spell could be concentrated on that long. Oh, it's possible.
Yeah, it's more of a spell save. Not something that he can observe, but something that's hard to get rid of. So, in a way, hoping you give up on trying to get rid of it.
Um, I ask, is this artifact is such a drastic measure on you?
Well, the shaft of the sun spear.
Um, hmm.
Yeah.
Feels like he just sits back on the couch all of a sudden, like just like really taken aback by this statement.
Sel kind of like looks at him and gives like kind of like half kind of smile to him. Let's just say we have a lot of impossible things that we get into.
This is uh, ancient philosophers and ancient artifacts from long dead saints. Yes, I can see, but when it's time traveled, I suppose impossible becomes normal. In fact, I would. As the mundane becomes the abstract, strange.
Now you're kind of getting where our group is kind of at.
Great. Yes, I look forward to this.
That's a wild ride.
I'm sorry I won't be able to add much information for you about any heritage because I've mentioned in the letter I don't know my parents. But if I happen to have other information you're interested in.
Oh, have been, your name, said, uh, it, it was, I don't remember, I don't know this name, but,
Yeah,
I am,
my surname, it's actually new information to me since this adventure started.
seems, uh, everything I've thought about it. First, I was not certain what you meant. I don't know. But, uh, that, that it's like there is a struggle going on with him all of a sudden. You see his eye like literally twitch off the side of it. I'm sorry. I have not. I don't know what I can. But perhaps we can research. Perhaps
Would
it
you
is.
like me to cast a spell that should calm your emotions a little bit?
I
It's only
am not.
temporary.
It is the coffee. It makes me. I'm jittery. I do
I-
not know.
Can I insight check?
Yeah, give me an insight check.
Because I'm just like thinking, does he have a chronic illness? 22. Probably a really good time.
You're- he seemed pretty fine. I mean, he's a little weird, right? So it's a little hard to tell. But when you get, as soon as his conversation got to the whole thing about his last name, I seems to be having some sort of breakdown. You don't understand. Like he seems to be struggling around the concept of his last name more than anything.
More than anything else.
You don't know. Yeah, like there's something weird going on. You don't know what's going on, but and then he kind of like pushes past the frustration of it. In fact, kind of looks a little bit like whenever Gwen is struggling to remember something that starts to slip away from her.
Oh. That's
And then
weird.
he goes, but Drakesna, the Scaleria, that was a competitor to the Arcanum, and so they kept good notes on their competition. I'd be happy to give you a tour of the library if you would wish to search your homeland.
Nudge Starman.
Someone looks at you. What?
You feel like Zelda's just like the whole like head like, what do you say?
I appreciate the openness, and Zarman does a light bow.
And just let me know any day you would like to visit the Arcanum, and I can show you to where the records of the Scaleria Drakesna are. Perhaps you will find the answers you seek.
It was more of me being disappointed I couldn't give you anything about it. But I appreciate the offer.
That was nice. That was just like,
And in case I do not wish to rattle on too long about theories, but you have an open invitation at Willow's Dirge, and I forward to your correspondence on, and we might Hopefully meet as a full group.
We will definitely keep in touch. And tell
I
me you
will
am.
write to you when we're having things fully planned.
Stands up.
Stands up well. And thank you for the tea, by the way. It was very good.
That is coffee, actually. There's much sugar and cream. Very little difference. Therefore, much more caffeine. You out and down through that very cramped spiral staircase, and you once more reach the hallway filled with all of his family portraits, all the weird eyes that are following you the whole time.
Is there any
Make your way back
names on the
out to
family
the
portraits?
none whatsoever.
None whatsoever. Odd. Very, very odd.
And you make your way out to the outside. He follows you out to the gate, actually. And then you're out on the other side. Make your final awkward goodbyes once more, and are left to go and meet with Erdwin.
Yeah,
And
as he walked away, Cell turns his arm in immediately, being like, "Why do you want to say you want to go with him?"
What?
When
No,
he was
I'm just not curious about Dracula's or my name.
okay, that's not really that. I mean, I feel he looks like he's trying to kind of make friends with us. So it might have been nice if you went with him. You look like it's a friends, Armin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want you to have friends. You know, your own friends. I know we have our group and everything, but I think it's important to kind of have your own kind of friends. You know? I'm not saying this to be mean to you or anything like that, but I just want you to try just interact with other people.
Well, it should be in regards that we're both genuinely interested in, though. Otherwise, is it real?
I mean, that's the thing. You can't find genuine interest if you don't start from somewhere. I mean, you might not start with genuine interest with each other, but maybe you find common ground as you talk more.
Yeah, so we can talk more during other things, though.
I'll just bye.
He's joining the Stars and Seas. Not like I'm not ever going to talk to him ever again after saying no to going to the library.
It's not.
What? He's joining the Stars and Seas Society? And you look over his Wander kind of like fucking pops his head from around you two as you're having the conversation.
Where do you even come from?
What are you talking about? I've been here the whole time. By the way, Cantrip found him, and you see he has crawling up on his shoulder this little monkey. I told you he was real.
I see.
So we're going to the Flying Mansion next, right?
Yeah, we're going to the Flying Mansion next. You've been there, right?
Yep, yep.
Do you mind leading the way?
Yeah, of course, not a problem. As long as he doesn't, you know, get all scary again. He thought that
Oh,
he was
it
going to
should be
turn into
fine.
something unreasonable.
Mm. Well, we'll keep it civil, so we don't aggravate him.
Gives a big yawn, a stretch, and he's like, "All right, well, we've got to go back to the hospital."
Huh. Interesting. Alright, lead the way then.
You make your way up the street, very hilly streets of Noblesse. Every one of the homes here are just built on an angle, and ever upwards at the top of this hill, you can see the hospital, and it gives you a little bit, strange memories. Just a week prior, you delved deep beneath it, and knowing what's underneath this hill makes this track a little bit different, right? But as you make your way up to it, you can see that stretching around the sides of it is actually like a pretty simple garden. There's little hummingbirds and um, butterflies and stuff flying through it. A couple people sitting out. You can see nurses and stuff are out there, like probably on like their break. And as you make your way to it, rather than going up the steps, he walks around the other side of it until you go into like the kind of side gardens, and there's a small wall that surrounds the hospital, and in between that wall and the hospital itself, there are just benches and little rose bushes and gardens, right? And eventually you go past mostly a bunch of yellow roses until you find at last this red rose bush, all right? And he goes, "Yep, totally saw him walk right into this thing." If you're gonna have a secret hideout or entrance, you should probably be more secretive about walking into it.
Um,
As he
you
turns
seem to
around
be
and he
fairly
walks
secretive of
backwards
being an
through it,
observer.
and as you said that, he has already passed through it.
Ah,
And you watch vines literally wrap around him and pull him into it. You've actually seen this kind of magic before. It reminds you of the portal magic that you had seen in Yoakeshi that had been blocking several of your entrances there.
Oh.
And as it kind of wraps up around him and it engulfs him and pulls him in, right? Surprisingly, it doesn't look like any of it like hurts him. There's a bunch of vines and thorns all over this thing. So the idea of forcing your way through it looks really painful. But you watch it and you kind of like tentatively like put a hand up towards it and it swallows each of you successively. And the next thing you know, you are next to roaring winds. You can hear it at your back. It's a little unsteady for a moment as you kind of look behind you as you totter back for a second. And you can see the city down below you. And to your left and your right are the sweeping and bobbing buildings of the Arcanum. All these towers and old school, like Hogwarts style floating buildings on top of each of these islands. And they kind of bob up and down a little bit in relation to each other on these buoyant clouds. And they're held aloft with crystals that kind of attach to chains on each of them, almost like crystal buoys. And before you pull up the map. There's actually a map for this, I think, somewhere here.
That's a weird thing to be rolling right now.
That was the action of click.
Good thing it was a shitty roll.
Yeah. But roll it really good tonight. One of the best with shitty rolls.
Zale steals the map.
Looks really good because we popped up in it. Ooh. Ooh.
Oh, you see something?
Yes.
Oof.
I'm about to throw you down.
Cool.
Just a second.
There we go.
All right. So, as you wander wander on the other side, and he looks. He goes, "That was a lot easier than last time. I got all cut up before. Maybe this time we were invited."
Oh.
And he kind of like walking backwards, and you can see ahead of him this this gorgeous man, and standing at the steps in front of this very simple wooden door in the front, Edwin, expectant, or at least having been made immediately aware at the moment you had arrived here. And as you approach, his hands resting on his cane, long, straight, uh, lightly strawberry blondish hair, his elven features. Oh, I'm glad that you came.
Well, we had an arrangement.
Oh,
Oh no, you're petting super hard right there. No, I cut off completely.
I'm glad that you've made it. Many people may have arranged. That doesn't mean behind him the door opens, and he just stands there and kind of just turns to the side and waits for you all to walk in past him. He kind of gives you each like a look up. Wander's the first to wander past. You know, it kind of just rushes into the house actually. And as you each, you know, go in, pretty much prompted by not letting wander off alone. They're rather still until each of you have passed inside, and then he turns around and walks in after you all. You hear as the door shuts right behind. You're standing in a circular foyer. Rises up about 3 stories high with these rings of banisters. You don't see any stairwells, and you don't see any branches that go out from this hallway. But as you walk across the top of it, or as you walk across the middle of this open foyer, wood floors and a piano in the center, he lifts up one of his hands off of his cane, and you see as he moves his fingers just a little bit in the motion of playing a piano, the piano plays a few little jingles, and all of a sudden, you see as the floor that was in the center rises up through the floor that was above it, as the floor that was above it passes through that floor and mound to yours. And this kaleidoscope effect, as you watch, as your blank floor that had no walls suddenly rises up to the top floor, and the middle and bottom floor switch places. You find yourself suddenly standing in what looks to be a study hall. And there is bookshelves lining the walls, and in front of you, a singular door, which opens up in front of you of its own accord. And Pridwin goes, "My study is the most secure place here for such a transaction."
Well then, let's proceed then. Oh no! No. By the way, Rachel, are you talking right now? Or your thing's just broken?
Can you
Okay.
hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you now.
There you
Yeah, it was on and it kept on flashing, but I could hear nothing from
That's
you.
so annoying. That's why I jumped in and out. Because I was asking a question and nobody was listening. So I was like, okay, clearly this is on my end.
Yeah, it was just a green circle. I was like, is she trying to talk or the thing's messing up? Yeah, we did not hear a single thing for you for the past hour.
Sweet. Just awesome. I love it.
How weird. That is very, very weird. What was your question?
I ended up just messaging Sapphire, so I've got the answer.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Zale's about to have his bank account wiped. Haha.
Wait, what?
You left your wallet out in the open, Zale.
It's Whippy, excuse me? Wait, what? Swear to God. I named the statue went to my vet. I was going to. Now I'm not so certain if I should. Freaking white baby.
Yeah, I think the entire spell tab of everybody's sheet broke, so
Cool.
mine completely wiped. So even unpreparing and trying to prepare it again broke up, so
Yeah, that's I just noticed that, so I stopped. Even with items, actually. You can't unequip and equip things.
Yeah, no, that was happening for me too.
I mean, we're at least thankful that we got them up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
We can get the character sheets, and that's
And
really
it can
the
roll,
most important
it can
thing.
roll stuff like that. And honestly, if you still have your hot bars and you put some spells on your hot boards and stuff like that, they still exist.
yeah, for some reason, Zarman was concentrating on 10 blesses at the same time, so I don't know
Hell yeah.
what happened there.
For power. Ava is me.
Don't want a 10 before to hit.
I'm
54
actually
to
trying to
hit.
find a way to have the racial spells prepared, prepped, and not count to the known spells and all that other shit, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even after setting up a custom spell, it doesn't even pop up in spells.
Exactly,
So.
but I just, after I finished doing that, I was like, gosh dang it, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I put that
Hey,
on side, so.
Okay.
At least I got my spell DC back. And my spell attack. I didn't have that for the longest time.
And I've just been doing maintenance that I wanted to do earlier this week, but couldn't, so.
Man, I'm gonna have a freaking. Oh, there we go. Welcome back.
Hello.
Oh,
No!
Hey!
there you
Wow.
are.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Ah, gosh, where did it last break off?
Right when we got to the steady, and then basically you're about to describe the steady, and then
God damn it. Alright. Um, so, looking in here, you can see that what you would expect from his study is not what you see. Perhaps you imagined something more akin to the odd dungeon that you've seen beneath the orphanage in Broken Star Bay. Crystals and crackling electricity and tomes with satanic symbols or demonic symbols on them. Instead, you see is a very quaint and well lit room, about 100 feet long, lined with bookshelves and lit with the light blue flames of ever burning and heedless torches. And there's the uh, stained glass windows letting in this soft ambient light across the desk and bird cage and several portraits that you can see have the labels describing them as being past headmasters of the Arcanum. There are a numerous amount of them there. As far as you can tell, it seems that he was probably close relations and friends with every headmaster that has been at the Arcanum since it began.
oh,
But most noteworthy, especially to you, Zarman, is the fact that right behind him, sitting on the desk, not in a case or some vault or anything, just sitting right there on top of his desk, is the rather unassuming metal wrought shaft. There it is. Shaft of the sun. I do hope that you'll take care of it.
this motherfucker just had the artifact on his fucking desk.
You weren't kidding when you said you trust the security of your study.
This is the most secure place in all there. On my desk, or in a ironclad. Protections that are here are not so easily.
Curiosity, is Zell seeing any magic in here?
Looking around, not any. Very mundane looking place, other than those ever bright torches that are going off. I don't notice anything magic in this place. Very, very humble looking study.
Well,
Uh,
the slight tilt of Zell's head.
You hadn't even noticed magic in the first room until it did the weird room shuffle thing. And then all of a sudden you were like, then all of a sudden all of the walls became magic. And you were like, okay, that's weird. And then it went back to looking non-magical. Everything in here looks pretty non-magical again.
Am I getting a sense of like how rot worked? Where a lot of it was like once activated, it shows magical signatures, but
Yeah, you're starting to get a feel that some of the stuff that's buried really deep into stone can't be seen until it is activated. And then it can be seen with the stone. It's like so
It's
far
because
the
it's
thing
laid in a layer where you can't see it.
exactly. It's inlaid deep enough behind the stone and the bedworks and stuff that they've covered up all of that essentially.
Zell
And
comes. Percy glances around.
now I've heard that you've been quite busy in the past week. The events of your heroics in Griffin's Perch have been newsworthy.
It was
Definitely quite a predicament. But we made it through.
Indeed. I suspect that Fox was not prepared for your strange.
You're cutting in and out pretty hard.
This makes the Pridwood voice too much for the Goth voice.
I suppose that Fox was just not prepared for your particular thing.
I guess not. People caught them by surprise.
Tell me, you find yourselves also entangled in the local politics. It seems that you found yourself in a similar predicament back in Port Valiant. It is how you managed to gain the airship from, is it not?
As you are well informed.
Make friends in high places wherever you go. Is smart.
Wow.
And in many cases, might be worry.
Hmm.
However, I have looked into the information that you gave me, and I find that more worry.
Summer tilts his head.
Did it prove useful?
I have become calm. And of course, I do not believe that the full implications of that really understood. However, I believe that you are poised to make interesting waves. And as such, enlightening you might be of use to me. Or fast. They reach across many nations, stretch back thousands of years. Your friend, furry purple, was not far off to imply conspiracies. Though their nefarious undertones were plain, to say the least. I am a conspiracy. I confess, I'm guilty. His eyes light up for a little moment. He smirks. Me and the Maravesians, the Krovas, many others have been working together for some time. To the end of continuing Saint Ava's mission. Not the nefarious plot you thought. That's right. I am a follower of Saint Ava, an ally. We have somewhat differing ideas.
There's somewhat's a kind of understatement. But go on.
Every family has its disagreement. But one goal can help you overcome insurmountable odds. We have long worked to overcome such impossible odds. Bereavement, Shadow King, the devil himself. We face many threats. Some come with new faces. Whether or not this is an entirely new threat, or an old one wearing a new mask, only time will tell. But you've made me aware that there is an enemy that I was not aware of. And it would seem that they have wished to make a message, a statement, a declaration of war. Only make such a declaration if they thought when. And the nature of their declaration lies intimate affairs. I must only assume that I'm completely compromised at their whim, hopeless on my own. I hope that maybe, with new unexpected friends, we might be able to surprise them.
Working towards a common enemy.
Same enemy that fretted the Marvesi, whoever turned their dear sibling against them. I believe they are responsible for turning a knightly order that was once loyal into a traitorous organization. You have heard of the recent war against Yellum.
We have.
Two part of that. This traitorous organization reared its ugly head recently. And the Queen herself asked the knightly orders of Arvale, multitude in number and oaths, gallant and heroic in nature, Arvale and its citizens. And do you know what they said? They said, no. In fact, now, the Queen herself fights in their stead. She is off on the distant front lines, fighting where they will not. And why? Will they cower? Are they suddenly lacking in bravery? And honor? No. In fact, it is for honor. They do not fight because the knightly orders protect first the people. And what have the people been saying? What have Vox been saying? What did you hear them shouting? Perhaps the halls just
So this is
Hmm.
bring up Valente.
they say they cannot march. Queen releasing the day proves that they have turned against the people. The honorable thing is stand by the people, not the crown. And yet, Yellow marches. Do you imagine that their armies will view a difference between the people and the nobles, between the knights and the peasants?
I think we're getting at.
This
So
idea was put in their mind by one knightly order in particular, one called Order of Asmodeus. They call themselves demon fighters of the foul and defenders of people. I suspect that they have other ambitions. But fighting them would mean fighting noble men. And of course, what a waste that would be of such a noble life. But there are other ways to stop wars. If one has the resources and the intent.
I
I'm
think you
guessing you've
know.
heard our
Or
intent.
a big open map.
Oh,
As you're talking, he's pulling a map from this side area.
Well then,
I'm guessing you're telling us this because you've heard our intent when we first arrived in front of the crown.
Oh, everybody.
Amongst other things.
You have and noble life luxury and ensure such for their family. In fact, you could retire now, and your children, great grandchildren, would live prosperous lives. However, what would the nation that they live in look like? What will the world look like? We have an opportunity if we work together to make that world a safer place.
Zell's like
There.
eye twitches. Like, fuck, you're right, but fuck, I don't like you.
So online. I guess the Order of Asmodeus then.
And he points out this map that looks exactly like the one in cartographer supplies. And he goes, these are the sphere of influence of a source of most economic power. And in the modern world, money buys everything, and a lack thereof, well, it can stop even the greatest, most important of dreams. He points out the protectors. These are the nightly orders. At one time, me and the Crown of Arvale held equal power and influence here. Most disputes from them we handled. Most funding we supplied. But it would seem that they've gained their own ground, and now are supplied and influenced Order of Asmodeus. With that influence, they've begun to lay insidious ideas into this organization, Vox. I have no doubt that their startling advanced technology that they had access to in these current events, well, they must have gotten them from someone. Someone with suggest that we take over the current economic influence and force them out little by little. Of course, this is better accomplished if we coordinate. It would be a terrible shame if we were to undercut the actions the other one was doing. That type of thing could easily be taken advantage of by our mutual enemies.
Zell looks at the map, kind of scanning. And while kind of looking at him to look at the map. And how do you plan on coordinating then? What's your plan of action?
I worry about handling most of trying to sow dissent within the Order of Asmodeus. They believe that all of their members are wholly loyal to them. I believe that I can wrest some control back. You, however, should focus on the lesser known entities. There are untapped resources, most notably amongst the artificers. As progressive technology becomes more important in the war effort, it would be a great boon to gain that before they take it from us. if they are conspiring to force us into war against Yellum, they will also conspire to ensure that we have the least powerful tools available.
I see.
The rest, I will take your as the outlier. Your initiative is the most unpredictable. The action that I must assume that they will see coming. Result, I will take your lead and act accordingly, reacting based off of the assets that you seize and the ventures that you seek. On the outside, we'll look like competitors, but we will help each other all the same.
And this boy getting
Essentially, in modern concepts, y'all are discussing creating a legal monopoly, right?
Yep, that's what I was about to say. How to character, we're basically creating a legal monopoly right now.
You're discussing monopolizing this place before someone else tries to
Let's do it. Yep.
play Monopoly.
Yep. Yep.
Most intense Monopoly ever.
Mm-hmm. Where people die, thousands of them can die.
He snaps his finger and the map rolls up across the table and he hands it over to you. Oh yeah.
I'll take that.
This and in his other hand he hands out so in his left in his right hand he hands the map out to you, Zale, and in his left he hands the rod to you, Sarman.
Sarman will immediately put it in the bag of holding.
The saving of Vale. And maybe
Super cut off right there.
Oof.
No, no.
oh,
And you're at maybe.
Moving on now, and then maybe.
the world. What is that?
The world. Yeah,
figured.
I figured, yeah. So I'll nod his head. Well, we're gonna be. Well, you have work to be done then.
There
Well then,
was that. We're business partners now. And I do look forward to getting to know each and every member of your stars inside.
yes, I look quite forward to know anything about you and your ash ball.
He leads you out. Make your way to the stairwell. To that circular room, and it once more does that weird up and down thing where like the banisters that are on the rooms around it literally move through each other and up and down in this odd kaleidoscope effect until all of a sudden they reorientate and the room is like different on you, and you can see has his hand on his cane and he looks over at you, Zarman, and he says, I do hope that you are everything that I think you are. And then all of a sudden, the banisters undo. You can see that it's now no more doors or walls or pictures on this level anymore, and just the one door leading out, and it opens on its own. And he stays standing right where he is, and he goes, until our next meeting.
Until then.
Say to him.
I said until then. Until walks out.
He's standing perfectly in the center of this room, and right down on the ground, both hands on it, watching you guys leave. Last of you out under,
Walkers behind us.
kind of
right?
like looking around, like, wow. Yeah, no, he wanders out with you guys, and he's just like, ah, and wanders the last one out, right? Because he took a moment, freaking out about the fact that there were now no more doors. And then he runs out with you guys, and the door shuts of its own accord, and you just see Pridwin still standing there in the center when the door closed. And then you make your way back over to the other edge, and as you're walking over there, Wanda goes, "This is the best part!" And he jumps right off the edge, and you watch as he just disappears.
Well,
It's one of these. Okay.
yep. Not just like in the library. Come on. And so walks off, basically.
And you fall about 60 feet, and then whoop, you end up popping out, and you pop right out the bush at the other end. You kind of stumble forward a few steps, a couple of like leaves fall off of you, two rose petals dance out around, and one after the other, you each pop out, and you are once more in the full gardens around the hospital, and on ground level in Hearthvine.
That does the whole thing with the
Mm,
petals where he like blows his like air up so it like gets out of his face.
The
God.
rose petal falls out of your hair and floats off to the ground.
Well then, that went swimmingly.
I really thought that we were going to get in a fight with him pretty much every sentence he said. But
He,
we can't be that lucky.
he sure likes to make the other people.
He even
No.
has a way to manage saying nice things in the most tense way possible.
I'll just think, man. Well then, looks like we have a lot of work to do. If that's the case, that's true, and I don't think he's lying to us. At least at that point. It looks like we got a lot of work to do. A lot of things we got to discuss with the rest of our group. Some plan actions. And really get to the heart of the heart find. Ah, this would be great.
Wander down the steep steps of Mont Noblesse away from the hospital. You get to the redstone clay archway, ivy grown, that is the portcullis to you getting to each of the districts. Pop through it thinking of the riverside. And when you get to the village, you see as there's the teetering home of Fee's place ahead of you, and promise of, your friends inside. And it is peeling away into the afternoon. You can see dusk kind of touching across the tops of the trees across the river, and as it begins to end into nighttime and you approach Rosemarie's, we're going to take a break. And on the 10 o'clock, we will then be moving into us just chilling Rosemarie's and shit.
Mhm.